she's going to land in Australia and she's going to get booed because people hate the woman. She's ghastly, she's toxic, she's horrible, she's ruined.
So let me break this down, because this situation has been seriously getting under my skin lately, and once you hear the full picture, you'll see exactly why this whole thing feels so wild. Picture this for a second. Boris Johnson, former UK Prime Minister, a guy many people once linked to strong conservative values, suddenly drops one of the most out-of-touch takes we've heard from a British politician in a long time. And that's saying a lot, because the political scene lately has been full of strange takes and messy commentary. He's out here saying Prince Harry and Meghan Markle should come back to the UK full-time like nothing ever happened. He's basically saying all is forgiven and expects the public to welcome them back with open arms. And I'm sitting here thinking, has he completely lost the plot? Does he actually know how regular people in Britain feel about all this?
Boris Johnson, who I think is now a discredited figure in so many ways in British politics thanks to the Boris wave of immigration, has made his most unpopular call yet by arguing for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to return full-time to the United Kingdom. He says all is forgiven and that we should welcome these two hustlers and race baiters back to the country. Well, I say piss off.
But here's where it gets deeper and honestly more suspicious. This doesn't feel like Boris just chasing headlines or trying to stay relevant. This feels calculated, like there's a bigger play happening behind the scenes. There's talk about something called Operation 4, and the whole vibe of it is pushing this idea that the royal family is struggling so badly that bringing Harry and Meghan back is somehow the solution. That narrative just doesn't sit right at all. Now, before even getting into why that sounds like nonsense, you need to understand what's really been going on across the UK lately, because it paints a much bigger picture. Things are getting tense for the monarchy in a very real way. Recently, two senior royals got heckled during public appearances, and this wasn't the usual distant shouting from behind barriers. People got close enough to directly call them out and demand answers, especially about the Andrew situation and his links to Jeffrey Epstein. That kind of energy? That's not normal, and it shows just how heated things have become. King Charles was out in Cornwall in St Austell, doing the usual royal duties, meeting people, supporting community projects, especially focused on young people. That's the kind of thing the royals are known for, right?
But this is what's really shocked me, actually. Boris Johnson, so he was Prime Minister at the time of Harry and Meghan's Megxit, and now he has revealed what went on behind the scenes and a simple message for both him and his wife. Writing a truly deranged column for the Daily Mail, he said of the Sussexes, "I noticed how much zing they seemed to add, how people's eyes lit up when they came into the room. I had vaguely concluded that Harry and Meghan were a national asset, and I decided to see if I could talk him out of leaving."
But then things took a sharp turn. As he's walking through the crowd, someone suddenly shouts at him, "Are you covering for Prince Andrew? How long have you known about Andrew?" It wasn't quiet or polite either. It was loud, direct, and seriously uncomfortable. You could feel the tension, and even the people around him looked unsure about how to react in that moment. And it didn't stop there. Princess Anne, who many see as one of the hardest working royals out there, ended up dealing with the same kind of situation. She was at Worcester College, Oxford, attending the 100th annual conference of the Agricultural Economics Society. Yes, that kind of event. Think about it. That's not exactly a flashy occasion. She's there purely out of duty, representing the crown at something most people wouldn't even pay attention to. And even there, she gets heckled. People shouting about Andrew and Epstein, demanding answers, pushing her on what she knew and when she knew it. Now, look, people are clearly upset, and the Andrew situation has caused serious damage, no question about that. But Princess Anne showing up to an agricultural economics conference and getting dragged into that chaos? That just shows how far this frustration is spreading. But here's where things take an even stranger turn. And the details really matter here. Boris Johnson writes this column in the Daily Mail, and reading it feels like stepping into a completely different reality. He starts talking about Harry and Meghan back when they were still working royals, saying they brought this zing to events. He describes how people lit up when they entered rooms, like they had this special energy. Then he drops this line calling them a national asset. A national asset. Let that really sink in for a second. And it gets even more surprising. Boris claims that when Harry and Meghan were planning to step away, he personally tried to step in and change Harry's mind. He paints this picture of a private meeting, a room cleared out, just the two of them standing face to face. Boris says he approached it in an avuncular way, like he was giving friendly, almost mentor-like advice. And then he throws in this random detail about one of his brothers briefly being in the same school class, like that somehow builds a connection. The whole story feels strange, almost like it's trying too hard to reshape how people remember those moments. So Boris is basically saying he was talking to Harry like they shared this elite Eton background, like that alone made them somehow connected or gave him special insight into Harry's decisions. That's the angle he's pushing here, and it already feels a bit out of touch. And what was his big message to Harry? He told him it was a pity they were leaving. He kept saying there was so much good Harry could still do in Britain, so many causes he could support, so many opportunities right there at home. His whole pitch was simple. Why leave when you can stay and make a difference? But Harry said no, and that's where Boris tries to get clever about it. He actually writes, "I may have delivered Brexit, but I could not deliver Megxit." He clearly thinks that line is sharp and memorable, but it really just shows he didn't fully understand what was going on at the time. Now this is where things go from questionable to genuinely frustrating, because Boris doesn't stop there. He suddenly flips and starts saying Harry and Meghan should come back.
She's copyrighted the As Ever brand, and she's going to land in Australia and she's going to get booed because people hate the woman. She's ghastly, she's toxic, she's horrible, she's ruined a young, once promising man who's now a husk of his former self, who cannot even stand up for himself and who looks for all the world like he doesn't even want to be.
He claims their time in America has been some huge success story. He even points to this report suggesting Meghan sold nearly 1 million jars of jam. 1 million! That number sounds impressive, but when you actually look into the brand and what's been happening, it tells a very different story. There have been ongoing reports about large amounts of unsold products sitting in storage, with stock piling up and getting close to expiration. From a business perspective, it hasn't exactly been smooth sailing. But Boris is presenting it like she's built some unstoppable business empire. Then he keeps going, saying there's no in going to America, trying things out and then walking away if it doesn't work. He brings up names like Gordon Ramsay, Harry Styles, Robbie Williams, and even Piers Morgan to back his point. He even throws in that One Direction eventually went in both directions, like that's supposed to land as some clever joke. But then he drops a line that really stands out, and not in a good way. He says that if Harry and Meghan come back, they would, of course, need to smooth things over with the rest of the family. That part feels way too casual for something that's clearly a lot more complicated behind the scenes. Smooth things over? That's the phrase he uses. He actually describes everything that happened between Harry, Meghan, and the royal family as richly comic family feuds. That wording is wild, and honestly, it doesn't sit right at all. This wasn't some small family disagreement over something trivial like seating plans at a holiday dinner. They went on international television and made serious claims about the royal family, including accusations of institutional racism. They sat down with Oprah Winfrey and spoke about conversations involving the skin color of their unborn child. That's not comic. That's heavy, complicated, and deeply personal. And the timing made it even more intense. These claims were made while Prince Philip was seriously ill, and during a period when Queen Elizabeth II was dealing with major health issues, even if the full situation wasn't publicly known at the time. The weight of all that can't just be brushed off like it's part of some drama series. The impact didn't stop there either. The relationship between Prince William and Prince Harry has reportedly taken a serious hit, and many believe that damage runs deep. That's not something you casually label as a feud and move on from like it's entertainment. So when Boris frames it like that, it raises a bigger question. What is he actually trying to do here? Because this isn't just a random comment that slipped out. It feels intentional, like there's a reason he's pushing this idea now. Who is this really for? Because if you actually listen to public opinion across the UK, there isn't this big push to bring Harry and Meghan back into the fold.
Between Harry and Meghan and the royal family as richly comic family feuds is one of the most disgusting understatements of all time. These two cretins literally accuse the British royal family of institutional racism as Prince Philip lay on his deathbed as the late Queen Elizabeth II was battling bone cancer Prince William will never forgive them, and you want to bring them back to us at a time, by the way, when their charity ventures have failed, when their business ventures have failed, when they've been dumped by Netflix. I mean, seriously, I used to be such a supporter of Boris Johnson, but this man has lost the plot. He is so out of touch with the British populace, and I'm really suspicious as to what this is all about, Mike Graham.
A lot of people have strong views on the situation, and it's far from a simple welcome back narrative. And then you look at Boris himself and things start to make more sense. He's no longer in office, no major role lined up, no official position keeping him in the spotlight. Lately, he's been popping up in interviews and discussions trying to stay in the conversation, including talking about major global issues that people have very strong opinions on. It starts to feel like a play for attention, like he's trying to stay relevant and insert himself into a headline-grabbing topic. Pushing the idea of Harry and Meghan returning definitely gets people talking, and that might be exactly the point. But here's where things take another turn, because there's something else developing that's starting to catch attention. Meghan is reportedly planning a move involving Australia, and that's where this story starts to get even more interesting. So now she's reportedly locked in the As Ever brand over in Australia and is getting involved in some kind of wellness retreat setup. And when you really stop and picture what's going on here, it feels like a massive shift from where things once stood. This is someone who once had access to some of the biggest platforms in the world. Queen Elizabeth II had given her the opportunity to spend years working across the Commonwealth, backing major causes, building influence and making a real impact on issues she spoke about publicly. That level of access is rare. And now, the focus seems to be on a high-priced retreat experience where attendees are expected to pay thousands of dollars for a weekend event. Reports suggest prices around $3,000 with shared accommodations and limited amenities included. That's a big ask for something being marketed as a premium experience. From the outside, it raises questions about what this really is. It starts to look less like a mission-driven project and more like a commercial venture designed to generate buzz and attract attention. You can almost see the strategy. Attach a well-known name, create a sense of exclusivity, and let the media do the rest. There's also this attempt to frame it with a kind of royal-adjacent energy, but in reality, it's a private business arrangement. It's not an official visit, not tied to any formal role, just a deal built around appearances and branding. And when this kind of event gets announced, reactions are rarely quiet. Public opinion tends to be strong on both sides, and moments like this often spark intense debate about reputation, credibility, and direction. At the center of it all is a bigger conversation about image and change. Prince Harry was once widely seen as a figure connected to service, especially through initiatives like the Invictus Games, which earned real respect globally. That history is still part of the story. But now, every new move gets analyzed, questioned, and compared to what came before. And whether people see this as reinvention or a step in a different direction entirely, one thing is clear. This situation continues to draw attention and strong reactions wherever it goes. He used to be seen as the fun one, the relatable one, the royal who didn't feel distant or overly polished. People connected with that side of him. Even that wild Vegas story, yeah, it raised eyebrows at the time, but a lot of people brushed it off as him just living freely and being young. In a strange way, it made him feel more human to the public. But fast forward to now, and the picture looks completely different. Instead of that easygoing image, it's been one headline after another tied to legal battles, disputes, and ongoing tension.
What is Boris Johnson actually doing here? Who is he working on behalf of? Because there is no public demand to welcome these two cretins back to the country, or am I missing something?
No, you're absolutely right, Dan. And I think the problem for Boris is that he's a bit lost. He doesn't really know what to do. He hasn't really got a job now. He hasn't been given a peerage. He hasn't been given a UN ambassadorial role. I mean, he was forced to appear on Laura Kuenssberg's show a few weeks ago, if you remember.
His relationship with his family has clearly taken a serious hit, and that part of the story keeps coming up again and again. On the business side, things haven't exactly been smooth either. Major deals that once sounded huge have faced setbacks or ended early. Partnerships with big platforms like Spotify concluded, and other projects have struggled to gain consistent traction. There's been a pattern where big announcements don't always turn into long-term success. And then there's the legal fight with the Daily Mail, which adds another complicated layer to all of this. Now, to be fair, past tabloid practices have faced serious criticism for a reason. There were real scandals involving illegal activities like phone hacking, and people were held accountable for that. Those events are part of documented media history, but this specific case brings its own set of questions. A key part of the claims relied on testimony from individuals connected to past controversies, and that alone has made people look twice at how reliable everything is. One name that came up was Gavin Burrows, who was expected to play a major role in supporting the case. Some of the claims linked to his testimony were extremely dramatic, involving allegations about invasive surveillance methods that many observers found hard to verify, and that's where things took a sharp turn. Toward the final stages of the evidence process, Burrows reportedly stepped back from parts of his earlier statements, raising serious doubts about the strength of the overall case. When situations like this unfold, it doesn't just affect one headline, it reshapes how the entire story is viewed, and in this case, it adds even more uncertainty to an already complicated situation that keeps evolving in the public eye. Now this is where things really start to fall apart. Reports suggest that key documents in the case have inconsistencies, even down to signatures not matching properly. That kind of detail raises serious questions, and it's why people are saying the entire case is getting dangerously close to collapsing. But here's the part that really stands out. One of the only claims linked to Harry in all of this involved an attempt to track down a supposed drug connection at a nightclub called China White. That's the angle that's ended up front and center. Now, Harry has already spoken publicly about past drug use in his own book, so that part isn't exactly hidden. But bringing a legal case that ends up dragging those details back into headlines again, that creates a whole new wave of attention, and not the kind most people would want. It also raises bigger concerns about how the case was built in the first place. Relying on testimony from individuals with controversial backgrounds has made the situation even more complicated, especially as parts of that testimony started to unravel. At the same time, several journalists have pushed back on the claims being made. Some have stated that the stories they reported didn't come from invasive tactics, but from people within Harry's own social circle. According to testimony, information was being shared openly in social settings, not secretly obtained. One example that came up involved journalist Charlotte Griffiths, who said Harry himself gave her his phone number through Facebook and invited her to a party. Events like that suggest a very different dynamic than what's being argued in court, and that's where the narrative starts to clash. On one hand, there are claims of intrusion and misconduct, but on the other, there are accounts describing information being shared directly and voluntarily. That contradiction is a big reason why this case is getting so much scrutiny. All of this feeds into a wider issue about public image and consistency. Because once these details hit the headlines, they shape how the entire situation is perceived. And it doesn't stop there. Another major topic now gaining attention is security. Specifically, who should be responsible for covering the cost when Harry and Meghan visit the UK? There are ongoing discussions among officials about whether public funds should be used, and that question alone is enough to spark serious debate across the country. Now imagine this for a second. British taxpayers being asked to cover security costs every time Harry and Meghan show up in the UK. Especially if those visits are tied to private or commercial ventures.
I see that she's off to Australia. She's copyrighted the As Ever brand, and she's going to land in Australia and she's going to get booed because people hate the woman. She's ghastly, she's toxic, she's horrible, she's ruined a young, once promising man who's now a husk of his former self, who cannot even stand up for himself and who looks for all the world like he doesn't even want to be anywhere near her.
That's where people really start raising eyebrows, because if claims about massive business success were true, figures being thrown around in the Malayin, then covering personal security shouldn't even be a question. But that's exactly why this debate feels so heated, because many people simply don't buy those numbers in the first place. And that's why more voices are starting to question what's really going on here. The whole situation is being looked at more closely, and people are forming strong opinions as more details come out. Now, to keep things balanced, there is another side to this that matters. King Charles is dealing with a genuinely difficult situation, and not all of it is within his control. The Andrew scandal has created serious pressure on the monarchy, and it complicates everything. Because no matter how strongly people feel about Harry and Meghan, their situation is different. Supporters can still point to Harry's military service, his role in creating the Invictus Games, and other contributions that were widely respected. At the same time, the Andrew controversy continues to cast a long shadow. Investigations, public scrutiny, and ongoing questions have made it a constant issue hanging over the royal family. That's a big part of why public reactions during royal appearances have become more intense. You can see how all of this connects. The pressure builds, the frustration spills out, and suddenly even routine events turn into moments of confrontation. But here's the key point in all of this. Bringing Harry and Meghan back into the fold doesn't automatically fix these deeper problems. If anything, it could introduce a whole new layer of tension. Because what happened wasn't just a quiet disagreement behind closed doors. There were high-profile interviews, public statements, and major media moments where serious allegations were discussed on a global stage. Books were published, private conversations became public topics, and the situation escalated far beyond a typical family dispute. That kind of fallout doesn't just disappear overnight. And when relationships at the center of it, especially between Harry and Prince William, are believed to be this strained, it raises real doubts about whether any kind of easy reconciliation is even possible. So the idea that bringing them back would somehow stabilize everything? For a lot of people, that just doesn't line up with reality at all. It would send a message that you can say anything, do anything, take private family matters and put them on full display for the world and still be welcomed back, like nothing ever happened once things don't go your way. That's the part that doesn't sit right with a lot of people. Because where do you draw the line if that becomes acceptable? Actions have consequences, especially when everything plays out on such a massive global stage. And then you think about Queen Elizabeth II and the weight of everything she represented. This was someone who spent her entire life committed to duty, putting the institution above personal matters at every turn. Through decades of change, pressure, and scrutiny, she stayed consistent.
So right to raise this Australian trip though, Mike, because it is absolutely astonishing. Like, how desperate is this woman? You know, someone who had the world at her feet, who the late Queen Elizabeth II said, you can spend your life advocating for the Commonwealth. Now she is going to charge poor Aussies $3,000 to spend the weekend with her at a hotel where the pool isn't even open, apparently, and strangers have to share bedrooms with another person, yet still pay $3,000.
During her final years, she was dealing with serious health challenges while also facing personal loss, and at the same time, deeply private family issues were being discussed publicly across the world. That contrast is hard to ignore. So when all of that gets brushed off as a richly comic family feud, it's no surprise that people find that description difficult to accept. For many, it feels like it downplays something far more serious. Now, some might look at the current situation and wonder, if things really are this complicated, and if projects and deals don't always go as planned, could there eventually be a return? It's possible. But even if that moment ever comes, it doesn't automatically mean everything resets overnight. It doesn't mean public opinion suddenly shifts or that past events are forgotten. Rebuilding trust on that level would take more than just showing up again. It would require clear efforts to repair relationships, address past statements, and show a different approach moving forward. That kind of process isn't quick and it isn't simple. It would involve accountability, consistency, and a willingness to handle things differently than before. Right now, though, the signals people are picking up don't point clearly in that direction. Public appearances, interviews, and ongoing projects continue to shape how the situation is viewed. At the same time, Meghan's focus appears to remain firmly in the commercial space. New ventures, branding efforts, and business deals continue to roll out, including projects like the reported wellness retreat in Australia. All of it adds to the bigger picture. A story that keeps evolving, drawing strong reactions and leaving a lot of people questioning what happens next. The idea that she would suddenly return to the UK, step back into royal duties, and fully embrace that life again. That feels completely unrealistic to a lot of people watching this unfold. It doesn't match the direction things have been going at all. But what really raises eyebrows is this growing push to frame the situation like the monarchy somehow needs Harry and Meghan to survive. That's where this so-called Operation Thaw narrative comes in, creating this dramatic picture of a royal family in crisis that can only be fixed by bringing them back into the fold. And when you actually look at it, that argument doesn't hold up well. Prince William and Princess Catherine continue to have strong public support, and they represent the next chapter of the monarchy. Their family symbolizes continuity, stability, and the future direction of the institution.
Obviously, what's going on here is some guy in Australia has gone, I'm starting up a wellness retreat. Who can I get to come and promote it and see if I can get some publicity for it? I know. I'll ring up the grifters in chief. I'll pay them a couple of £100,000. They'll come to Australia and I'll get loads of publicity, and lots of idiots might go there because they might think it's the home of, celebrity wellness.
The monarchy itself has been through far more intense moments than this. It has faced abdications, major public tragedies, and periods of serious scrutiny, and it's still endured. So the idea that this current situation is something it can't survive, that feels overstated. What creates more problems, though, is constant pressure from different angles, both inside and outside, trying to reshape the narrative or stir up more division. And that's where figures like Boris Johnson come into focus again, because when he puts out statements suggesting a return, it doesn't calm anything down. It adds more noise. It sparks more debate, more frustration, and more confusion in an already complicated situation. It makes people question the motive. Is it about staying relevant? Is it about headlines? Is there something else behind it? Whatever the reason, it doesn't seem to reflect the broader public mood. And then there's the personal side of all this, which can't be ignored. The choices that were made, stepping away, speaking publicly, sharing private matters, those were major decisions with long-term consequences. If things haven't turned out the way they were expected to, that doesn't automatically reset everything. It doesn't erase what's already happened or how it was received. Any path forward would require accountability, reflection, and a completely different approach than what's been seen so far. It would mean addressing the past directly, not sidestepping it. Because at one point, there was a very different public image. There were real contributions that people respected, including work supporting veterans and raising awareness around important issues like mental health. Those efforts mattered, and they were recognized, which is why the contrast with the current situation stands out even more. Now everything feels tied to branding, appearances, and business ventures that keep the spotlight on, but don't necessarily rebuild the same kind of trust or credibility. And that's why this story keeps pulling attention. It's not just about what's happened, it's about what comes next, and whether anything can actually shift from here. To be dealing with one legal battle after another, while your relationship with your own brother is still in pieces.
And that's what it's all about. It's completely a commercial deal. They're trying to make out that it's a semi-royal visit, right? It's not. It's literally Harry and Meghan on the grift, hoping against hope that they get a free goodie bag at the end of it that might have a Rolex in it. I mean, it's that shallow.
That's a tough place to be, no matter how you look at it. But here's the reality. It's not too late to change direction. It's not too late to rebuild something. But that would take real accountability, real humility, and a completely different approach than what we've seen so far. And right now, there's no clear sign of that shift happening. And as for Boris Johnson, the message couldn't be more direct. Just stop. Seriously, stop pushing this idea like it reflects what people actually think, because it doesn't. It feels disconnected, forced, and completely out of sync with public sentiment. Whatever the motivation is behind it, it's not helping the situation, and it's definitely not helping the country. At some point, reality has to kick in. The monarchy isn't hanging by a thread waiting to be saved. It's been through far bigger storms and come out the other side every single time. It will continue to stand, not because of Harry and Meghan returning, but regardless of it. And the sooner that's accepted, the sooner everything can move forward without all this constant noise and distraction hanging over it. If you made it this far, I appreciate you sticking through it. And if you want more breakdowns like this, real talk, no filter, straight to the point, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with anyone else who's been following this story. Drop your thoughts in the comments too, because this is one of those topics where everyone's got an opinion, and I want to hear yours.